And what do you think what do you think you learn more from, the success or the failures?
Oh, I think they're all useful. I never dwelled on failure. It didn't weigh on my mind. It didn't discourage me. It was just part of the path.
But you seem very conscious of the lessons, the things you would do differently. How'd you figure that out? What were those things in those early times that you look at and say, boy, the things I learned early on that I did differently in Braintree because I had these experiences? What are those?
I think so. A couple. One is we didn't know what we were doing with voice over IP, and neither did we know what we were doing with real estate. We were trying to learn on the fly, not ever having done it, which you can do, right? And a lot of companies are successful in doing that. But you have it's an uphill battle to do that. With credit card processing, I was able to learn the industry inside out, be on the streets. I was able to talk to customers and sell them and learn their pain points. So I learned the industry inside out. Number two, the people you choose to work with is perhaps the biggest decision you'll make, because they'll make or break you. And I learned that very quickly.
That's a great point. I'm on the investment committee of the I2A fund here, and one of the things I ask entrepreneurs who come in, some of you may have come in, is, how do you understand the problem? Have you ever lived with the problem? Mm-hmm. If you don't have inside-out knowledge, your likelihood of being successful is so much lower because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn it on our dime and your blood, sweat, and tears. And there'll be plenty of blood, sweat, and tears and other things to struggle through. When Bryan and I met last week, I shared a post I read recently about a company out of Y Combinator called 42 Floors. And it's essentially trying to do an online, taking online the office real estate market. And it was fascinating because the guy had a great idea. He went to Paul Graham. He'd been through YC before, I think. He went to Paul Graham and said, I've got this great idea. This market is meant to be disrupted. It should be online. Here's all the reasons why. And he said, this is a great idea. It sounds great. I don't want you in the next class. I want you to go in the class after that. If you do one thing, go get your commercial real estate broker's license and go be a commercial real estate broker for 6 months and figure out what you don't know about why this market is the way it is. And he got there, and he started out, as I remember the post, basically saying, I'm going to disrupt the whole thing. This is all backwards. We don't need these people. And it was the sense you got, like the classic disruption model. And instead, when you get past the sort of 50,000-foot perspective, he said, there's a real need. These people who are the listing brokers provide a real service to their clients, and they need more eyeballs. They need more people in. And so instead of being a disruptor of all, he became a real value add to the people who had about clients. And now this business just, I think, got $10 million from Andreessen Horowitz and some others, and they're doing incredibly well. And if you look at it, that inside-out knowledge, I mean, what's 6 months? What's a year? When you're talking about spending a decade in building a company. You did an incredible job of being able to fund your company, though, through cash flow.
Yeah.
So one day, though, you decided you're going to take a big fundraising round from a great firm, Excel Partners. Those of you who don't know Excel, it's one of the top venture firms in the world. It was Facebook's original venture capital firm investor, Peter Thiel being their first professional investor. And before that, a lot of people didn't know Braintree.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about why you decided to raise money, and let's talk a little about that process. Because like the last two guys that were here, I mean, you're working with world-class venture money coming in from the coast. I used to laugh because I know when I had this board meeting because I'd see the limo parked out front of our building, or the town car, I should say. And it, so talk about why you decided to do it, and why there, and what are the benefits of doing what you've done.
Yep. I mean, early on in Braintree, we wanted to create an exceptional company. That was the goal. And we wanted exceptional people. We wanted our customers to love us for what we do and we provide them. We wanted people internally to say that Braintree was the best company they've ever worked for. And we wanted to get those two things right. And so I wanted control over the environment. I wanted to set the pace. I wanted to establish the principles and the habits. And so we did it for 3 years. And I think we did a really good job. We got to a point, though, where we were processing almost $3 billion in credit card volume, which in our world is a ton of money. And we started having discussions with banks about what we could do and what we could not do, and we just started hitting some limitations. And basically got to a point where we had so much we wanted to do, but banks wouldn't allow us to do it because we didn't have deep enough pockets. And so I tried to offer my car as collateral, and they said it wasn't adequate. So it brought us to a point where we had to start reconsidering what we wanted to become as a company, and we settled on the determination that we would raise some money. And we were in a good position because I had been contacted by VCs every day for like the previous 2 or 3 years because all our portfolio companies used us and they would say great things about us. And so when it came time to raise money, we were in a good situation. We were profitable. We had recurring revenue. Our customers were wonderful, growing like crazy, and we really could take money from pretty much whoever we wanted because we were in a good spot. But the funny thing about funding, as we evaluated the pros and cons of what would happen, the one rule I had is I wanted to control the company. I did not want to cede control, and I wanted to call the shots. And the company I chose had to be okay with that. But one of the unintended benefits of the funding was before we took money, we were nobody. Like, nobody knew of Braintree, and we didn't have any press. And after we took money, like all of a sudden we were someone. People took note of us, and all of a sudden because we had third-party credibility behind us, we were worth talking to. And so I think in the past 12 months we've had something like 30 pieces of press coverage about us, and we're just on the radar of a lot more people than we thought. And so I never thought that funding would give us that type of visibility, and we didn't take the money for that, but it's been a great benefit because we now are in a conversation we weren't in before.
So talk a little about the process, because a lot of people here would be in earlier stages, but
yeah.
As they think about getting into, for you it's probably your Series A, I guess, because
yeah.
you've never raised money before, but for most people that amount of money would be a Series B or Series C
mm-hmm.
kind of dollar amount. I think it was 34 million was
right.
what was reported. So how did you decide who to talk to? And how was it being a Chicago company going out to the coast? Was it a easy experience or,
mm-hmm.
or different than you expected? Just talk, and then eventually why Excel?
Yeah. I spoke to other entrepreneurs for data points, and I wanted to know who was the most entrepreneur-friendly, who didn't pull any punches, who would support the growth, who would let the company culture develop as we desired. And Excel came as one of the most highly recommended VCs out there. And they've been true to that. We have been thrilled with them as a partner. And I had a contact with nearly every venture firm out there because they'd all contacted us. And so it was easy to start conversations. They were there already. And we settled on Excel because they were committed to companies to be who they were, who they wanted to become, and they didn't interfere with their business. And they weren't, they made decisions oftentimes that were counter to their own personal interest, but would benefit the entrepreneur of the company. And I admired them for doing that. And they've done that.
And when you were out there as a Chicago firm, I don't know how many investments Excel has in Chicago now. Probably not. Probably one.
They're also in Groupon.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, a lot of them are the late stage
yep.
Groupon. But did anybody pause at saying, I don't know if I want to go for a company that far away, or?
No.
Because that was the popular wisdom a long time ago. Major Silicon Valley VCs will only drive to a board meeting. It's interesting to see how that changed, and
yeah.
And so there was no hesitation. That's all. That's in the past.
I didn't hear it, but I have heard it from others where companies in different areas where people passed just because they were in. There wasn't a direct flight from their city to their city, so they passed, and that's
why Chicago helps.
I heard it. Actually, I heard that today. So
interesting.
Yes, that's real.
Interesting. But for you out there, the firms on your short list all were interested
yeah.
in coming to Chicago
mm-hmm.
and the whole thing. That's great. That's great. By the way, Kevin talked about Soapbox, to go Soapbox. If you have any questions, please put them in. We'll get to questions in a few minutes, but it's helpful to have them, not only so I know what your questions are, but candidly so you can vote, because when the list gets long, it's hard for me to see them all, but if you vote, I'll know exactly what you're thinking. So please do ask your questions. Now, you've made an interesting move. You were CEO for a long time, and you
yep.
are no longer CEO. Talk about that decision, if you would, as a
yeah.
founder and still controlling it, but not being CEO.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship, it can be soul-crushing work. And sometimes it's really helpful to not know that, because then you wouldn't do it. Other times it's very helpful to know that, because if you are not equal to the task at hand, you'll get crushed. And I ran Braintree for 3 years, and we had zero management in the company. When we hired someone, the rule was, we will measure you by two things. One is how awesome your peers say you are, and the other is how awesome your customers say you are. And if you don't meet that threshold, you're out. We just don't have a safety net in here to put you in another department or put you through a training program. That's it. And so with that type of structure, I was a catch-all account for everything. And after about 3.5 years, when the time came for funding, my gas tank was on empty. You know, I'd been doing this for a long time. And so my first conversation with Excel, I said, just so you know, right, that my gas tank is on empty and I need someone else to help me. And I've been trying to find someone for 2 years. I just couldn't find the right fit, the right chemistry. And so it was the first thing I said, and I really needed someone to help me run the company. I was.
And where was he at the time?
We hired a gentleman named Bill Reddy. He was actually entrepreneur in residence at Excel.
Oh,
and so they made the introduction, and we explored for about 6 months together.
And where was he coming from?
He had previously run a company called iPay. They did bill pay for banks.
Got it. And you're, from your perspective, you know, getting him to come here, no problems?
We had a great match. He knew the industry. We had a great chemistry between us. He valued our culture, and I think it was just a match all around. And
that's great.
Yeah, so he's been here, been at Braintree for almost a year, and I'd say we have an excellent relationship.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, I've heard great things about him. Now, Bryan, you are have an interesting background. There's no question about it. But I know you're not like me. You're not a software engineer.
Yeah.
Talk about the challenges and the opportunities that, or opportunities you feel like that's brought you, being a tech entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone here in this room knows there's a lot of religious discussions about technical founders or non-technical founders and which one is better and why. And I think that there is no one right answer. That if you are technical or non-technical, you can start and create a successful company. And there are pros and cons to both. And you know, I mean, for example, I would love to be in the code base right now. I'd love to be coding 12 to 18 hours a day. I just would love it. I know I'd love it. But I think that if we put those limitations on ourselves on what we can or cannot do because of what the ideology may be, I think we're placing improper constraints on ourselves.
So what would your advice be for someone out there who's a non-technical person who's looking to found a company? What would your advice be to them to help them be more effective?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to find someone extremely good, and you have to know if they're good or not. Because if you're not a technical person, I didn't know how to hire technical talent when I began, and I've gotten better over the years, but you have to know how to recognize good talent.